You're at a gathering. Someone asks how you've been. You open your mouth to answer honestly, but before you can finish the first sentence, their eyes have already drifted. They nod politely. They smile. But you can feel it. They're not really listening. So you stop. You switch gears. You say something light, something easy, something that requires nothing from either of you. Oh, you know, same old, same old. And just like that, the conversation becomes a performance, a script you've memorized, a dance you've done 1,000 times. You walk away feeling more alone than you did before you spoke. This isn't social anxiety. This isn't shyness. This isn't you being bad at conversation. This is something deeper, something most people never stop to name. You don't hate talking to people. You hate talking about nothing. For some people, conversation is a way to fill silence, a pleasant hum in the background, a social ritual that keeps things moving, keeps things comfortable, keeps things safe. But for you, conversation has always been something else entirely. It's not background noise, it's not filler, it's not a way to pass time. For you, conversation is a form of nourishment, or it's a form of depletion. There's rarely anything in between. When a conversation goes deep, when it touches something real, something honest, something beneath the surface, you feel it in your body. Your chest opens, your mind sharpens. You lean in without thinking. You could talk for hours and leave feeling more energized than when you started. But when a conversation stays shallow, when it circles around weather, traffic, weekend plans, polite observations about nothing, you feel it draining out of you. Slowly at first, then all at once. Your answers get shorter. Your smile gets tighter. You start looking for the exit. And the worst part, you feel guilty for it. You tell yourself you're being difficult. You tell yourself you should be grateful someone is talking to you at all. You tell yourself that maybe you're just not good at normal social interaction. But here's the part almost no one explains. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're wired differently. And that wiring has a name. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the inner world of people like you. People who don't just think, they feel their thoughts. People who don't just talk, they search for meaning in every exchange. Jung believed that some people are oriented toward the outer world, toward action, stimulation, and surface-level connection. And some people are oriented toward the inner world, toward reflection, depth, and psychological truth. For those in the second group, small talk isn't just boring, it's almost painful. Because when you're wired for depth, shallow conversation feels like trying to breathe in a room with no oxygen. You're going through the motions, but nothing is actually feeding you. Jung would say that people like you aren't looking for more conversation. You're looking for real encounter. An encounter is different. It's when two people drop the script, when they stop performing, when they say something true, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't fit neatly into polite social rhythm. That's what nourishes you. That's what makes you feel alive. And when you don't get it, you don't just feel bored, you feel starved. Jung used the term psychological hunger to describe this exact phenomenon. He believed that introverted, depth-oriented people don't just prefer meaningful conversation, they require it for psychological survival. Without it, something inside them begins to wither. It's not dramatics. It's not being too sensitive. It's the same way your body knows when it hasn't had water in too long. Your psyche knows when it hasn't had real contact in too long. And small talk, no matter how polite, no matter how well-intentioned, doesn't count as real contact. It's the psychological equivalent of empty calories. It fills time, but it doesn't nourish you. That's why you can spend an entire evening surrounded by people, talking and laughing and participating, and still come home feeling completely hollow. Because you weren't actually met. You were just seen on the surface. I used to think I was bad at parties. I'd stand in the corner, drink in hand, watching people move from group to group, laughing easily, making jokes, keeping things light. I tried to join in. I really did. I smiled. I nodded. I asked the right questions. But inside, I felt like I was drowning in noise. It wasn't that I didn't like the people. It wasn't that I was judging them. It was that every conversation felt like it was happening on the surface of a frozen lake, and I was the only one who wanted to break through the ice. I'd leave those gatherings feeling more lonely than I did before I arrived, and then, every once in a while, I'd have a different kind of conversation. With a stranger at a coffee shop, with an old friend I hadn't seen in years, with someone who, for whatever reason, was willing to go beneath the surface. We'd talk about fear, about loss, about what it feels like to be alive and confused and trying to make sense of it all. And I'd walk away feeling like I'd just eaten a full meal after weeks of starvation. That's when I realized, I'm not bad at conversation. I'm just hungry for a different kind. This is why you feel more alone in a crowded room than you do sitting by yourself at home. Because loneliness isn't about being physically alone. It's about being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. When you're at home, in your own silence, you're at least being honest. You're not pretending. You're not performing. You're not forcing yourself to care about things that don't matter to you. But when you're in a room full of people having surface-level conversations, you're doing all of that. And it costs you something. It costs you energy. It costs you authenticity. It costs you the quiet, steady sense of being yourself. Jung believed that the worst kind of loneliness isn't solitude. It's being with people and having to hide who you are. And that's exactly what small talk asks you to do. It asks you to hide your depth, to dim your curiosity, to pretend that you're satisfied with conversations that never go anywhere real. And after a lifetime of doing that, you start to feel like something inside you is slowly disappearing. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from this. It's not physical tiredness. It's not even the same as social battery depletion, though they're related. This is deeper. It's the exhaustion of constantly translating yourself into a language other people can understand without being uncomfortable. You learn over the years which parts of yourself are too much, which thoughts are too dark, which questions are too probing, which emotions are too intense. So you edit, you soften, you lighten. You become very good at giving people the version of you that doesn't ask too much of them. And in the process, you lose touch with the version of you that's actually real. That's what small talk does over time. It trains you to abandon yourself in exchange for social acceptability. And the tragedy is, most people don't even realize they're asking you to do that. They think they're just being friendly. They think they're just making conversation. But for you, it's not conversation. It's erasure. But here's the truth. Most people won't tell you. You're not the problem. The culture is. We live in a world that values speed over depth, quantity over quality, surface-level friendliness over real intimacy. We're taught that being good with people means being able to make small talk easily, to keep things light, to never make anyone uncomfortable. But for people like you, that's not connection, that's performance. Real connection, the kind that actually nourishes you, requires something most people aren't willing to give: vulnerability. It requires someone to say something true, to admit they don't have it all figured out, to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. And in a world that rewards polished surfaces and perfect Instagram captions, that kind of honesty is rare. So you're not failing at socializing. You're just refusing to settle for conversations that don't feed your soul. And that's not a weakness, that's a boundary. Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet who spent much of his life writing about solitude and inner life, once said that most people use conversation to avoid themselves. They talk to fill the silence, to distract from discomfort, to keep from having to sit with their own thoughts. But people like you don't use conversation that way. For you, conversation is a bridge, a way to connect not just with another person, but with something deeper: truth, meaning, shared humanity. Rilke believed that real conversation is rare because it requires two people who are willing to be present, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. And most people, most of the time, aren't willing to do that. Not because they're bad people, but because it's hard, it's vulnerable. It asks you to drop the armor and show up as you actually are. That's why, when you finally find someone who can meet you there, it feels like coming home. Rilke wrote extensively about what he called the loneliness of the artist. But he wasn't just talking about painters or writers. He was talking about anyone who lives primarily in their inner world. Anyone who thinks deeply, who feels intensely, who can't help but search for meaning in everything. For people like this, Rilke said, most social interaction feels like a kind of betrayal, not of others, but of themselves. Because to participate in shallow conversation, you have to temporarily abandon the part of you that's searching for something real. You have to pretend that the questions keeping you up at night don't matter, that your interior life is less important than being pleasant and easy to be around. And after years of doing that, you start to feel like you're living two separate lives. The one you show people, and the one you live alone. The exhaustion comes from the gap between those two lives, the constant code switching, the perpetual performance. That's why deep conversation doesn't just feel good, it feels like relief. Because for a few minutes, or a few hours, you get to stop performing. You get to stop translating. You get to just be. So what does this mean for you? It means you need to stop forcing yourself to enjoy conversations that leave you empty. You need to stop pretending that small talk is good enough. You need to stop believing that you're difficult or picky or too intense just because you want more than surface-level exchange. You're not too much. You're just looking for the right kind of connection. And that connection doesn't require 100 people. It doesn't require constant socializing. It doesn't require you to be on all the time. It requires 1 or 2 people who are willing to go deep with you, who don't run when things get real, who understand that silence can be just as meaningful as words. Those people exist. They're rare, but they exist. And when you find them, you'll realize that one deep conversation is worth 1,000 shallow ones. Here's what that might look like in practice. First, stop saying yes to social situations that drain you just because you think you should. If a gathering feels like it's going to be all small talk and no substance, it's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your energy. It's okay to choose solitude over performance. This isn't antisocial. This is self-preservation. Jung would call it honoring your psychological needs. Rilke would call it protecting your inner life. Either way, it's not something you need to apologize for. Second, when you do engage in conversation, give yourself permission to steer it toward depth. Ask real questions, not, how's work? But, what's been on your mind lately? Not, how was your weekend? But, what's something you've been struggling with? You'll be surprised how many people are relieved when someone finally asks them something real. Most people are just as tired of small talk as you are. They just don't know how to break out of it. By going deeper first, you give them permission to do the same. And even if they don't take it, even if they deflect back to the surface, at least you tried. At least you honored your own need for something more. Third, seek out spaces where depth is the norm, not the exception. Book clubs, writing groups, philosophy meetups, therapy circles, online communities built around reflection and meaning. These spaces exist, and they're full of people like you, people who are starving for conversations that actually matter. You don't have to force depth in environments that resist it. You can simply find environments where it's already valued. This is one of the most underrated strategies for people who crave meaningful connection. Change the context, not yourself. Stop trying to have deep conversations at networking events and start having them in places designed for introspection. Fourth, learn to recognize the difference between someone who can't go deep and someone who won't. Some people genuinely don't have the emotional capacity for depth. They're not being shallow on purpose. They're just wired differently, or they're in a different season of life. But some people are capable of depth. They're just scared, or they've been hurt, or they've never been given permission to show up as anything other than fine. Those are the people worth investing in, because once they realize you're a safe person to be real with, they'll meet you there. And those are the friendships that last. Fifth, be patient with yourself. You've spent years trying to fit into a world that values breadth over depth. It's going to take time to unlearn that, to trust that your way of connecting isn't wrong. It's just different. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if maybe you are just difficult, when you feel guilty for wanting more than what most people are offering. But those moments don't mean you're wrong. They just mean you're still carrying the weight of a culture that never understood you. And slowly, conversation by conversation, you can put that weight down. And finally, remember this. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be understood by the right people. Jung believed that the goal of life isn't to become more like everyone else. It's to become more fully yourself. And for you, that means honoring your need for depth, for real conversation, for connection that nourishes rather than depletes. It means letting go of the idea that you need to be better at small talk. You don't. You need to be better at recognizing when a conversation isn't worth your energy and when it is. Because the truth is, you're not failing at socializing. You're succeeding at something far more important, staying true to who you are. And in a world that constantly asks you to dim your depth, to lighten up, to stop being so serious, that's an act of quiet rebellion. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who only want to talk about nothing. And there's a kind of peace that comes from sitting alone, knowing that you're not willing to betray yourself just to fill the silence. You've probably felt both. And maybe, for a long time, you thought the loneliness meant something was wrong with you, but it doesn't. It means you're hungry for something real, and you're not willing to settle for anything less. That's not a flaw, that's integrity. Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he also knew that becoming who you truly are often means standing apart from the crowd. It means refusing to participate in conversations that feel like performance. It means choosing quality over quantity in your relationships. It means accepting that you'll never be the person who can make small talk for hours and enjoy it. And that's okay, because what you lose in breadth, you gain in depth. What you lose in quantity, you gain in meaning. And what you lose in social ease, you gain in self-respect. So the next time you're at a gathering and someone asks how you've been and you feel that familiar pull to give the easy answer, pause. Ask yourself, is this a person who can meet me where I am, or is this just another performance? If it's the latter, it's okay to keep it light. It's okay to smile and move on. But if it's the former, if there's even a chance that this person might be willing to go deeper, take the risk. Say something true. Ask something real. Break through the ice. Because that's where you come alive. That's where you stop feeling alone in a room full of people. That's where you remember that connection isn't about quantity. It's about quality. And you, more than most, understand the difference. Picture this. You're sitting across from someone. The conversation started like all the others. Polite, surface level, safe. But then, somewhere in the middle, something shifts. They ask you a real question. You give a real answer. And suddenly, the air between you changes. You're no longer performing. You're no longer pretending. You're just two people sitting in the truth of what it means to be human. The conversation moves slowly. There are pauses. Silence doesn't feel awkward. It feels like breathing. You talk about things that matter. Fear, hope, the strange weight of being alive, the quiet ache of wanting to be understood. And when you finally stand to leave, you realize something. You don't feel drained. You don't feel empty. You feel full. That's what you've been searching for all along. Not more conversation, just the right kind. And now you know, it's out there. You just have to stop settling for anything less.